And it depends on what you're reporting. But I would make this point that, you know, you can protect yourself by not supplying your name and being afraid to do that. But what might be happening is the guy that didn't go to jail for that shooting down the block that you protected yourself as an informant is the same guy that shoots one of your children, you know, tomorrow. When he's shooting at someone else and your kids just happen to be walking by. And I've seen real life examples of that. People who didn't want to get involved and missed opportunities to put some thugs away and ended up becoming their next victim. And that's something that everybody has to weigh. But I'll go back to the Crime Stoppers thing again, or if you block your phone number, if you don't want us to know who you are, don't tell us who you are. That's my first advice. Sometimes we get people that will call and they give their name and address and then they want to be anonymous. Well, if what you called me about is integral to this case and I need that for prosecution, I can't protect your anonymity anymore. Yes, in the back.
Of the 16 homicides thus far this year, how many have produced an arrest?
We've got a large number of open homicides. We've got the count on the report. Maybe Scally can run and pick it up for us.
You said that this was that there was a cost attached with this. Do you have an idea of how much that might cost?
Depending on how long it goes, it's going to cost, I'm going to say a couple thousand a day.
And how much did you guys save during that overtime?
So far I've saved hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I can't give you an exact number, but it's in the hundreds. So depending on how much this cost me, and I can't give you an exact figure because I don't know how much has to be backfilled on overtime. It could cost me $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a day. I can keep it up for quite a while and still stay within my budget. Yes, sir.
I know you have Officer Jordan back on the education part. How does community groups and how often can community groups get education to try to give you proper information about what's going on as far as gangs, as far as what to look for and things like that?
You know, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. I think it's something we could talk about. Is there a usefulness to come out and do some, you know, town hall meetings or neighborhood meetings and talk about that subject, about how to get us information? I'd be open to that. Why don't we talk about that?
And even groups that we know are concerned or even going into the high schools. Like I'm with Youth for Christ in Peoria, right, and we go into the high schools. I'll be at Peoria High the start of the school year, and we go into Peoria with volunteers and leaders trying to mentor and do different things. How we want to know the best way we can be useful and, you know, and know these things and even try to put an initiative in while we're inside the school for all the teenagers, not just the bad ones, but for all the teenagers.
Why don't you and I get together, and I'd like to bring Detective Jordan in on that discussion. He's got a lot of information about particular gangs and competing gangs, and, you know, maybe we can help identify some of that at the same time.
Due to the nature of some of these crimes and the fact you brought back your gang officer, is it fair to say that the majority of these shootings are gang-related, gang wars?
You know, not all of them are, but I'd say a majority of them are. Again, a lot of them they move beyond the gangs. They move into this relational thing that you know, you shot my brother, so I'm going to make sure I get payback. So I and my friends and my family members are now looking for your friends and family members. And then that shooting happens, and then there's another group that wants to pay that back. And I think there's a lot of relationship between these things that sometimes dovetail into gangs and drugs, but not all of it. Some of it is just relationships. Yes, sir.
You said earlier that sometimes you take the kids back to the parents, and the parents say, I can't do anything with them, they won't listen to you. You tell them to find a way. A lot of these parents are scared that DCFS is going to come down on them for disciplining their kids. You know, when I grew up, what my mother did to me, you probably would consider attempted murder by now. But some kids, they get special, and you want to watch your parents trying to discipline their own kids.
Well, you know what, General, I agree with you. I think, though, that even in the modern state, with the way the laws are written today and with DCFS, I still think parents have a legitimate right to discipline their children, including corporal discipline. But it can't turn the corner on abuse, right? I don't know that we've prosecuted any cases for parents giving a kid a good spanking or, you know, we get cases where it goes too far and it's electrical cords on the legs and things like that. That is abuse. And there's a fine line between the two, but I'm not convinced that our society still does not allow corporal punishment for our children. I know I would have been guilty of it. You know, my son's felt the sting a few times, and he needed to. That's for every parent to decide for their own children.
But can I share with you a conversation that me and a couple other fellows had with one of the gang leaders about a week ago? We talked to one of them from Harrison Homes, and he said the problem is that you got a lot of them in a little bit of space now, and the number hasn't changed. Now the population, I guess, is still the same as what he's saying, and they're on top of each other. They have nothing to do. You got a lot of them kicked out of school. There's no men around. Fathers aren't around. So they go off what they see around them, and that's the gang leaders before and the violence that they seen them do, and they grew up believing this. So I think if we start working on the cure instead of dealing with the symptoms, let's go to what started all this and try to get some of these families back together, get some of these men or some mentors down there to talk to these kids, because if they don't know, they don't know. So,
I don't disagree with any of that, General, and I welcome everybody to do those things. I can't solve all that from here. Okay. We're going to need to wrap this up pretty quick. Councilman Gully.
Heard that the youth aren't able to like go to the parks, and that's the reason that they're in our neighborhoods. Well, what I found is when they're in the neighborhoods, they're congregating, making up games, they're shooting craps. They lose money, and they have a shooting or something. That has happened, and it just grows from one thing to another. Have you heard that we are not allowing people to use the parks? Because that's what I'm hearing from the youth.
I haven't heard that. Go ahead, please.
Congressman Gully, you can repeat that question again, I'll answer it for you.
Is it true that the youth can't gather at the parks?
No, that is not true. Our parks are open for any citizen in the city of Peoria outside. But when you start doing criminal activities such as drinking, making threats, gatherings, we have the right to close the parks down. Anyone can use our facilities, but you must use them accordingly by law. They can come to the parks, but if you're doing things that are illegal, we will take action. So what they're telling you is that is not true. Now, I spend a lot of time in the parks myself because I'm not a chief that actually sits behind a desk. I'm a working chief. So that means I'm in my community all the time. So I will tell you this. Our parks are open for anyone who wants to come and use them according to our ordinances and also the law of the state.
So during this curfew time, if I'm 21 years old, I can go to Carver, I can go to Logan at 11 o'clock at night, since we put the lights in so they can be there at night. That would be something that I can do.
The park officially closes at 11 p.m. That's all parks. So if the lights are still on, what we try to do is that we try to leave some leeway, but if you're doing illegal activities, the parks are officially closed. And we're not going to change that ordinance. That ordinance is 11 p.m.
And Chief, I don't want to belabor this, but what's happening then, the park district police are putting people out of the parks, and then they go stand on the corners in the neighborhoods. So now the citizens are calling me complaining, why are there so many people standing on the corner? And I asked them, well, what you doing? They said, well, the park district told me I had to leave the park.
At 11 p.m., yes, you do.
But then we don't have a curfew for them in the city. Is that correct, Chief?
Not after the correct age, no. You know, you
So
you can
leave the park and go on the street corners and stand. That's what